The ethics of being a reviewer are tough. On the one hand, you have your good name that you want to trade on. On the other hand, you have at your hands the fact that if you give something a good review and a bunch of people buy it, it keeps the people that are sending you the products happy, and it also can result in a lot of money for you via things like affiliate links. Jon and I talk a lot about that in this episode. And, you know, one of the interesting things is Jon never states it explicitly, but your good name really plays into the way that he approaches this. Before we go, I'd like to thank my patrons. They're great. They're awesome. I love them. If you've ever been interested in a podcast version of all these interviews, you can check the link in the description below. And you can actually get that. Put it in your favorite podcast player, and it drops weekly as opposed to having to wait for all the episodes. You get it all at one time. The only thing you miss is my beautiful face, and quite frankly, that's probably okay. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Let's turn the conversation a little bit. Being a reviewer, I think it's always interesting. So like I said, I've talked to you. I'm talking to you. I've talked to Bardwell, I've talked to Bruce, and I've talked to Bob Ruge. And everybody has a slightly different spin on the ethics required to be a reviewer. So for instance, Bruce refuses to accept any affiliate links whatsoever. He refuses to accept free products. He pays for everything out of his pocket. Bardwell does affiliate links and accepts products, and then Ruge kind of makes his own stuff. I mean, it's his is a little different. But you know, I think you mentioned in one video recently I think it was the TS100 video. You mentioned something about your handler from Banggood. So tell me, like, what does it take to keep a handler happy?
So I don't know if it's because I'm still somewhat small, but there's really not a ton of demands. If they send you a product, I mean, they expect a review on it. I always treat every review that I do for any company like it's the last one I'm going to do for them, because what I say may make them angry enough for them to never send me something again. And I'm okay with that, because I don't want to hide anything from the community. What I would rather not happen is that some kid or some guy that, like, I only have this budget, spends it on something that doesn't work out for them. So, right. And I'm always, like, the first 20 reviews I did for Banggood, probably half of them were a little critical, and maybe 20% of them were, like, very critical. And I was like, okay, they're never sending me anything again after this. But it hasn't quite been like that. I've never really even gotten too many comments from them, other than, like, hey, we sent you this date, like, when is the video coming out, kind of thing, if it's running behind. There's no set schedules per se, but they don't want it to be more than, it seems about 2 or 3 weeks is when they kind of start asking, and that's after they can confirm you've received it, because sometimes, you know, shipping will take 2 or 3 weeks in itself. Sure. And then they do want if you've seen, especially like in the past year, when it's, you know, holidays here or holidays over there overseas, everyone comes out with a video that day. They do ask for that. And so the first time they did that, I was like, I don't care about that. I don't really care that much about my sales. So I just didn't do it. And that was like, I wouldn't say I got in trouble over it, but it was kind of like, in fact, they really didn't say anything. But when I watched a few other people's videos, I was realizing, okay, that was hurting the person that's working with me to help me. So I've tried to kind of do that and throw in some other value in there too when I do that. But they do expect that. But other than that, it's been pretty open. And that goes for all the other companies that I've worked with. And it's probably been a ton of the big ones. Nobody really has any expectations as far as, like, talking good or talking bad about their products. But I'm always waiting for that. Like, okay, after this uploads, they're never going to send me whichever
Right.
company it is, and it hasn't been that way. I'm sure eventually that is going to happen, and but I don't ever feel bad as far as talking about a particular product. And I try to like today I released a video about the Beta FPV new whoop that they put out, and
I mean, it didn't. The title wasn't good.
Yeah,
I didn't watch that one, but the title just was like, "This is trash."
yeah, and I was like, look, they've had a really strong history. They're always pretty much like one of the better ones to recommend. Maybe this one. And then the other thing that I also try to do is I'll do a retraction or update video if something that I found out was wrong. So if even in this case, like if they contact me and say, hey, I think you got a dud, let us send you another one. Not everyone's experience. Like, I'll be happy to make another video. And sometimes on the other hand, if I'm trying to get a video out quick, like some of those happy model videos, and then a week or two later, I see like everyone's having issues with their boards burning up, I'll make another video and say like, look, this didn't happen to me, but I'm seeing a ton of people complain. Like, you should know before you go throw it in there. And it's like, hey, that means they're not going to click on my link and buy the thing. But it's like, I'd rather people just keep coming to watch rather than that.
So have you, in the time that you've spent doing this, have you encountered any conflicts of interest that you didn't expect?
Any conflicts of interest? Not that I can really think of. And like, I try to put it into context on like what type of a product it is, how new the company is. And people are a lot of times people in the comments will say like, you should review every product on its own. But I'm like, well, if the company released 3 bad products before this and this is a 4th, like, I'm going to make a lot bigger issue of it as opposed to they have a beautiful track record and this is one slightly like, and maybe that's right or wrong, but that's how I typically think of things. I do know personally a few of the owners of different shops. There's a few big names that are local to Houston. But I never really felt like any pressure to say anything good or bad either way from any of those. There has been a few companies that just absolutely refused to send any review copies for a couple of things. And I was like, well, if you don't send it to me, like, I get it because I'm not the biggest reviewer out there, but send it to somebody because, we want to know before we plunk down a few $100.
Right.
And sometimes there's a few of them that are like, well, we think if we give people a review copy, it's going to influence their opinion. And maybe that's true for some people, but definitely not for me. In fact, maybe I'm almost like the opposite because if you give it to me and I have to use my flight time for this thing, and it's no good, like, you're really gonna hear about it,
right?
Because like generally, if I buy something, like, I'm pretty confident it's good before. Whereas if you send it to me, like, it may or may not be good. But if I feel like that time's wasted, and like I have one of my other hobbies is like watches, like collecting watches and learning about watches, and I have like a watch Facebook group called the Spring Bar, and I don't really keep up with it, so it's probably not any good anymore. But like if somebody sent me a Rolex to review, I don't have a Rolex, but if somebody sent me a Rolex to review, I would not feel bad of like saying all the things that I thought were wrong.
Yeah. So it doesn't sound like anybody's ever just flat out cut you off.
No, not yet, but I'm sure it probably will happen at some point.
Okay.
And I'm okay with that. Like, in fact, I feel like that almost means I'm doing my job.
Bruce Simpson said that, and I can't, maybe I had that wrong. I know he doesn't do affiliates, but maybe he accepts the review products. One time he said something bad about Tyrannus, and Tyrannus was like, F you. we're or never send. Oh, it was the Horus. It was the Horus.
Oh,
He
yeah,
said it was
yeah,
the Horus, like the plate, the dinner plate that you're supposed to fly on.
Yeah.
I don't know how that was supposed to work. But Bruce Simpson he trashed it, and he said after I did that, Tyrannus was like, nope, never send you another review unit again. So it's interesting. I mean, there is a distinct, like, I think in anything that we do, in front of a camera, there's almost an innate ethical dilemma built into it, right? For me, it is, being true to the person that I'm interviewing while trying to be aware that there is possibly another side to the story, right? And trying to build the balance of, do I push too hard and try to get the other side, or do I just let this person look like a hero? With reviews, I mean, obviously you're getting free stuff that could influence how you think. But what about like affiliate links? Like you're directly monetizing things at that point.
Right. So
tell me about what you think the ethics of affiliate links are.
So I don't know what the exact ethics are, but like my opinions on it was basically the exact opposite of Bruce. And I love Bruce. Like I've watched him since the first few videos. Yeah. He's awesome, but I mean, I would say his opinions have probably cost him like a great deal.
Oh, he fully admits that.
And there's no doubt that his videos have made those companies massive amounts of money.
Yes.
And I mean, even the Joker, it was like, if you're good at something, never do it for free. And so like by giving a review, either favorable or unfavorable, you're giving attention to companies that are absolutely going to benefit off of that. And so to me, I didn't see anything wrong with that. I was like, I'm ready to get monetized in any way possible, as soon as possible. Not because I think it's going to make a ton of money, but because I'd like to be able to, my initial goal was like, if I can pay for my own hobby or even half of it, hey, that would be awesome. Mm-hmm. And then as I got into doing more of that work, it was, so in case a lot of folks don't know, for any of the affiliate partners that I have, if they click on one of your links, they don't have to buy the specific product. Like everybody probably knows by now, if they buy anything, it counts towards you. And so generally, you could get 1,000, couple thousand views, maybe a handful of people will click on the link, and maybe a handful of those will actually buy something. Yeah. So at least for me at my size, it's not like if I put a link to a Tyrannus, 1,000 people are going to go out and buy it. Mm-hmm. And for some of the programs, you can see analytics to see what they're actually buying. And in a lot of cases, they're not buying what you're talking about.
It's just so they may have point.
Right. It's just the entry point. And then, but that's helpful because then you can see like, okay, maybe people are interested in this. And then like for companies like Banggood, I always say like, don't buy anything you need tomorrow. Right.
Right.
And then some people I think it's generally safe. I've personally spent quite a bit of money at Banggood personally over the years, so I don't ever tell somebody to shop at somewhere where I haven't shopped. But you do have to wait. And there's the occasional hiccup. I've always had them take pretty good care of me, even before I was any type of YouTuber. But it is a lot of back and forth. And maybe being on the IT side, knowing how trouble tickets work, like I was used to going through that process. Some people are a little more impatient where they like want an instant resolution. They don't work that way. Mm-hmm. So for those people, I say like, look, if you're that concerned about it, maybe don't buy a $500 set of Fat Shark goggles, but things like hardware, M3 screws, M2 screws, things that you can generally wait on and you just need a stash of if you're in this hobby, like absolutely buy from there because they're generally one of the cheaper ones. And so I have no qualms about telling people if they ask like what I recommend they buy, what they don't buy. Generally when I'm flying, especially racing, I've gotten to the point where in the past couple of years, it's like, okay, if I'm racing a particular platform, I need multiple spares of every piece of that thing. So when I'm ordering, I can wait for the sale and I'll order however many, and I don't need it tomorrow because I already have, 3 or 4 others. I'm just replenishing my stock.
Right.
And if you're not that kind of person, then yeah, absolutely shop at one of the U.S. based shops. The other thing is, a lot of us in the U.S. don't realize is that there are so many people around the world that do FPV, and it's very difficult for them to order from the U.S. based shops because of import duties and stuff like that.
Yep.
And I've gotten, I was not always in the habit of even putting any links in my videos. Mm-hmm. And if I would forget, which would be a regular occurrence, like somebody that was from, Germany or the UK or over in Asia would just immediately comment saying, "Hey, where's the links? Where's the links?" Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's like, for me, I would just go Google it, but maybe I don't know what it is, but they always would call me out like immediately if I didn't put the links.
Yeah.
So I noticed that too, and you can see some of the analytics on what countries are buying, and it's not just the U.S. In fact, a large part of it is not, and they don't really have a lot of other avenues. Australia has a few FPV shops, but a lot of the world really doesn't.
So I talked with both Angela Jacks and Ramon. Ramon Grande. They're both. So Angela organizes Mexico FPV and a bunch of other things. She's probably one of the top organizers in the world.
Yeah, I saw those. That was awesome.
And Ramon is the Mexican national champion and the Latin American champion. And they both talked about how, getting gear up until just recently has been really difficult, and most of it came from Banggood. Except for lipos, which is still a real problem for them. They've now recently started to make inroads into consistent shipping from Pyro. So they both pointed that out. They're like, yeah, Pyro's been a real godsend to them because they're down south in Southern California. And, but yeah, I mean, like it was just crazy. Here in the US, it's like, oh, well, Pyro doesn't have it, so I'll check RDQ or maybe Heli Nation. I'll have it in 2 days.
Right.
That's with the U.S. Postal Service shipping it, and it'll cost me $3 to have it shipped, right? Plus however much I'm spending. And no, man, the difference in the rest of the world is just huge. Like we have an extravagance here that we don't even realize.
Yeah, for sure. And it wasn't until I saw some of those numbers that I realized, oh, okay, they can't just get 2-day shipping from like everybody just mentioned.
Yeah. Like we talked about, the ethical dilemmas of being a reviewer are deep, and it's very interesting to see how each different reviewer approaches it and how each person, even Jon, navigates those waters. I appreciate Jon's take. I appreciate the fact that he realizes that he's trading on his good name, and if he causes someone to spend $100 and they're disappointed because he gave a review to something that didn't deserve it, a good review to something that didn't deserve it, then he wouldn't appreciate that. He'd feel bad. In our next interview, we talk about the final thing. And once again, we're kind of nerding out on YouTube. At the heart of every YouTube channel, at some point, once you continue it to a degree, you realize that it is a fledgling business. And Jon and I talk about what the revenue streams that he has are and how they impact what he makes from his YouTube videos and how much he spends in order to keep his YouTube channel running. I hope you guys enjoy it. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.